Today, we're going to talk about the board meeting agenda and using it to create impact rather than create routine. Sometimes I hear from community league boards that they find that their board meetings are always the same or that they're not getting as far as they'd like to get in those meetings. So we're going to look at the board meeting agenda and how they can use that to change the feeling of not getting as far as they'd like. So when you look at a board meeting and consider your typical business, you're going to see some pretty familiar things. You're going to see the approval of the minutes. You're going to see usually that following the approval of the minutes, a series of reports. After that, you're typically going to see old business or things that are continuing on from previous meetings. And then you're going to see new business or anything that needs to be brought up as a new topic. That's often at the very end of the agenda. I'm not saying this is universally the same for every community league out there, but this is typically what you'll see. And things like the approval of the minutes and getting reports on your programs and the areas of operation are quite important. But they might not necessarily have to be the things that are at the top of the agenda. Well, what I like to look at when considering the creation of an agenda is what's important to the community. When I talk to people out in the community, board members, community members, and so on, what I'll often see is things like current trends are really important to the residents of the community. So what's going on in the community right now? Also, new development in the neighborhood, whether that be civic development, so changes to the neighborhood structure, or new developments in the neighborhood, like a new program that's being run by another nonprofit, and so on. Third thing that I hear is they want to understand the big picture or the broader understanding of why all the work is being done by the community league and how it connects together. And then after all of those things, they want to make sure that things are being managed properly. So they're looking at sound management of the community league. In all those four things, I didn't really hear, in my voice anyways, a lot about meeting minutes or approving the agenda or even necessarily going through the reports for the league. When I look at this, I talk about it a couple of different ways. So when we're talking about current trends, that is going to often be in a type of conversation we call generative conversation when you look at it in the board meeting. All that means is conversation that builds new ideas or new understandings for the board. New developments in the neighborhood, some of that could be that generative that I talked about already as well. Or it could also be more of a strategic nature. So when you're talking about new development in the neighborhood, you may be looking at how this is going to impact the work we're already doing, or how it can move forward the mission and vision that we've established. Understanding the big picture, again, that connects to both the generative idea that I talked about and the strategic idea. So it allows you to think about your work in a new way. It can also allow you to plan for your work. Sound management of the league is often what we call a fiduciary responsibility. So that means all of those legal and ethical obligations that you have as a board member, they could be taken care of in that idea of sound management of the league. So let me take a minute here to remove my annotation because it seems to be covering up my next slide. And what we'll do then is now we'll look at what a new agenda might look like. So it's still going to include some of those things you need to do, like approval of the minutes. That's something that needs to be there. It's one of the legal requirements. But then after you approve those minutes and make sure that everyone understands what happens at the last meeting, I would move on to a generative discussion. So start off the meeting talking about something that matters to the community. So it could be one of those new trends that we talked about. So maybe you want to have a discussion about how is cannabis legalization impacting our community? Are we seeing an impact? You may want to talk about changes to traffic in the neighborhood and what sort of challenges or opportunities that presents. Once you've really taken that time to exercise generating new ideas, new ways of thinking about things, and really exercising your minds as a board, then I'd recommend you move into that strategic discussion. So after you've had that first piece, you want to talk about where are we going as a league? How does everything add up? How do all of the reports feed into that? So I might recommend that you try looking at written reports rather than verbal reports, but find a way to focus that reporting on what's happening with where you want to go as an organization. After that, I would wrap up the night with looking at the fiduciary pieces. So approving your financials, looking at any other legal approvals that need to be done. The reason I frame them in this way is really for a key reason. We very often see those fiduciary responsibilities up front because we think we have to get them done no matter what. What I would rather see is that we take the time that we need to have those big discussions, making sure we save time at the end for those fiduciary responsibilities, but saving 15 or 20 minutes, whatever the time on the agenda is for them. Because I find with any board, community league or not, that the people around the table will fill the time that they have. So if you allow them to fill that time with those generative discussions and those strategic discussions, it'll set you in an exciting direction of where you're going. If you allow them to fill the time with the fiduciary discussion rather than fitting it in at the end, you may find it a little more disengaging.